Welcome back, dreamer. You're listening to Midnight Disclosure, where the veil between the known and the unknown slips away, and where secrets are spoken softly in the dark. Tonight, we present to you some of the most frightening UFO sightings on record. These are not brief flashes or shadows on the moon, mistaken for something else. These are the accounts that persist, bizarre observations, chronicled by witnesses, military, and even governments. Accounts that persist long after the darkness of night has faded. So relax, shut your eyes and let the night lead you. The world about you recedes. Your breath slows, and the secrets of the heavens reveal. It is 1942, Los Angeles. World War II is in full fury. The coastlines of the city defended against attack. Then, shortly after 2 a.m., on February 25th, air raid sirens wail. Searchlights pierce the night sky. Soldiers and civilians alike glance upwards and behold a formation of glowing things. Hovering motionless above the city, the army unleashes fire. Anti-aircraft cannons boom for almost an hour, firing thousands of rounds into the air. Bombs illuminate the clouds, but the objects do not get hit. Gradually, peacefully, they sail away into the darkness, disappearing as enigmatically as they came. The papers refer to it as the Battle of Los Angeles. Officials said it was all war nerves, balloons that had been mistaken for enemy planes, but the pictures say something different. Shapes in the searchlight beams, hovering, unbroken by the barrage of shells. To this day, no one has ever accounted for what hovered above Los Angeles that night. Now we travel ahead to 1957, Levelland, Texas. There's a cold November night, the sort where the highways seem to go on forever under the stars. Motorists start calling the police, frantic. They claim a glowing object, bright, egg-shaped thing, like fire in the sky, occupying the highway. Every time a car comes near, its engine sputters, headlights dim, radios cut off, and as the bright craft takes off and vanishes, the cars instantly burst to life again. Within a few hours, a dozen or more people have seen it happen. Farmers, truck drivers, even a state police trooper. The thing repeatedly comes and goes, crossing the rural landscape, silencing engines, leaving frightened witnesses stranded in the dark. The Air Force looks into it, but they're reasonable, lightning sounding phony. Ball lightning doesn't bring vehicles to a standstill. It doesn't float over highways, thumping with energy. To the people who witnessed it, something much stranger and much more intentional happened. One of the most unsettling encounters came in 1967, at Canada's Falcon Lake. A man named Stephen Michalak, a geologist, was prospecting in the woods when he saw two glowing objects descend from the sky. One landed nearby, metallic and disc-shaped. Curious, Stefan approached. He reported that he heard voices coming from inside, distant, robotic, but when he shouted for help in English, then in Russian, no one responded. The door of the craft slid closed, and it rose up a little into the air. Exhaust vents along one side blew him a gust of heat so hot that it ignited his clothing and scorched his flesh. Stefan staggered back into town with unexplained grid-like burns etched into his chest. Doctors and police verified his burns, but no cause could explain them. He endured nausea, headaches, and weakness for weeks, as if he had been exposed to radiation. Years later, his case is one of the most photographed and spooky UFO sightings in history. And then, 1980, Rendlesham Forest, England. Christmas week. U.S. airmen based at RAF Woodbridge witness mysterious lights coming down into the woods. Believing it to be a crashed plane, they go into the woods. What they encounter is far from that. A shining vehicle lies between the trees, metal and still. It reflects their flashlights like dark glass, and eerie symbols are inscribed along its hull. As they close in, the vehicle floats above the ground, slicing through the forest with impossible ease before disappearing into the darkness. The lights are back the following night. Colonel Charles Halt is in charge of a group that goes into the woods. You hear their voices tense, incredulous on his tape recorder, which is still intact today. Beams of light descend from the sky. They see odd objects flying across the horizon, and cattle stampeding in the fields close by. The Rendlesham recordings are still the most terrifying bit of UFO testimony ever recorded. The tones of trained military men facing something they were unable to control or explain. And so, dreamer, we float through time, through shadows and whispers, from Los Angeles to Texas, from Canada to England. The skies have borne secrets that left fear, awe, and unanswered questions in their wake. Rest now, for these are only the beginning. In the next part, we'll travel deeper into the world's most chilling encounter stories of entire towns silenced by glowing skies, of pilots vanishing mid-flight, and of beings seen not in dreams, but in the stark light of reality. It was 1966, in the suburb of Westall, in Melbourne, Australia. Far from Europe or America as it was, the experience still sends a shiver down the spines of those who witnessed it. Over 200 school kids and teachers saw a silver, saucer-like object descend into a green field, before climbing back up and disappearing at mind-boggling velocity. What's so creepy about Westall isn't the number of it's what happened afterward. Teachers who came forward were silenced. Kids were instructed to never talk about it. Soldiers showed up, taking samples and threatening locals. To this day, a great many of those who were there still whisper in their voices, describing a day when the sky opened and something unwanted came into their lives. Now we are back to the heartland of America. 1966, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A quiet town that was about to be haunted, not just by UFO sightings, but also by the bizarre emergence of a creature they referred to as the Mothman. It started with sightings of glowing, red lights running across the sky. Locals reported unusual aerial phenomena that moved swiftly over the town, floating quietly before blasting off. Shortly afterwards, individuals started reporting sightings of a winged humanoid creature with glowing eyes. Whether it was related to the lights or not, panic took over the community. The fear peaked in December 1967, when the Silver Bridge gave way at rush hour, and 46 individuals lost their lives. Some attribute the sightings as being omens, others as a diversion from something way more sinister taking place in the skies. Point Pleasant still is one of America's most paranormal UFO enigmas, but no encounter inspires greater dread than those had by pilots. Men who were trained to rely on their instruments, their eyes, and their instincts. In 1976, above Tehran, Iran, a radar base detected an unidentified object flying over the city. Fighter aircraft scrambled to intercept. The pilots closed in, and then their equipment failed. Radios went dead. Weapons systems were dead. One of the pilots tried to blast the object, but when he pulled the trigger, his plane was instantly plunged into darkness. Engines shut down, controls locked up. In the final instant, the vessel withdrew. And then his systems, REBOOTED, thought this sighting was recorded by military personnel and even reported to the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. The chilling aspect is that whatever sailed over Tehran that evening could knock out some of the world's most sophisticated planes without even firing a shot. In 1978, another pilot wouldn't fare so well. Frederick Valentich, a 20-year-old pilot flying over the base strait in Australia, called air traffic control in a frantic voice. "There is this weird aircraft behind me," he said. "It is not an airplane." The controllers instructed him to explain. It was metallic, long, with green lights, hovering over his airplane, he replied. His tone became more agitated. "It's hovering, and it is not an airplane," he repeated. And then, silence. His final words were accompanied by a scraping metallic noise. Valentich and his aircraft were never found again. Months of searches failed to yield even a scrap. His case is one of aviation's most frightening UFO-related vanishings in the Brazilian mountains. 1977, the town of Colares was the location of one of the most horrific mass encounters ever. For several weeks, there were reports of peculiar glowing spheres floating above their houses, dropping beams of light down upon the residents. The beams caused burns, scars, and deep puncture wounds to victims. Dozens of people got ill, complaining of dizziness, headaches, and weakness. Panic set in throughout the town, and many escaped into the jungle. The Brazilian Air Force conducted an investigation, codenamed Operation Saucer. Scores of photographs and documents were gathered, but the information was kept secret for decades. When documents were released, they verified the residents' assertion. Something inexplicable had hit Colares. Nobody knows why, to this day. As you rest there, hearing, picture what it would have been like to gaze up at the evening sky and see not only light, but purpose. Not only a mystery, but something observant, waiting, and possibly even striking. The encounters we've discussed tonight remind us that the unknown is not always far away, not always quiet. Sometimes it intrudes. Sometimes it reaches down, interrupting lives, stalling engines, or bringing pain and fear, and yet, still, the skies beckon us. Still, we question. Still, we gaze up, seeking answers. So rest now, dreamer. Let the questions linger, because in our next chapter, we'll move into stories where the chilling details are not just lights in the sky, but close encounters with beings themselves. Beings who step from their craft, leave marks on the land, and change the lives of those who meet them forever. Perhaps the most frightening report is from 1957 in Texas. Motorists driving down a desolate highway started complaining of their engines sputtering unexpectedly, headlights fading, while glowing oval-shaped objects floated quietly above. Witness upon witness recounted the same scenario. Their vehicle would sputter, the object would materialize, then disappear, and the vehicle would resume as if the encounter had not occurred. Local authorities received a deluge of calls, scores of individuals, reporting the same harrowing episode in one night. It wasn't light in the sky. It was technology extending downward, disrupting daily life, leaving an imprint that nobody could ever forget. Then 1961, down a quiet New Hampshire road, with Betty and Barney Hill. They were on their way home when there was this odd light in the air that started following them. They first thought it was an airplane, but then it came closer, lower, until they could see the form disc-shaped windows, and people moving in it. Panic. They attempted to flee, but seconds later, they had no memory. They were hours down the road, frightened and disoriented, when they regained consciousness. Later, under hypnosis, Betty and Barney reported identical ghostly details, tiny gray creatures, tests, and the feeling of being outside their own bodies. The Hill case was the first highly publicized alien abduction in America, and for many, it is the most chilling due to its detail, consistency, and the emotional toll it took. Abduction stories didn't end there. In 1975, Travis Walton, an Arizona logger, disappeared in front of his coworkers. They had been working late when a glowing disc materialized in the trees. Walton, inquisitive, went closer. Abruptly, a beam of light hit him, suspending him in midair. His colleagues ran away in fear, believing he had been killed. Walton was missing for 5 days. A huge search yielded nothing. And then he came back, bewildered, shaken, with a tale that rocked the world. He recounted being brought on board a vehicle, surrounded by creatures, some of them human, others recognizably alien. He told of knives and flashing lights, and the inescapable feeling of helplessness. Regardless of whether you believe him or not, it's one of the most legendary abductions ever documented, and it left not only him, but his whole town, eternally haunted. And then there's the chilling account of Pascagoula. Mississippi, in 1973. Two men, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, were fishing along the river when a glowing aircraft descended close by. 3 creatures appeared, alien-like, robotic, with clawed hands. The men froze, were floated aboard the craft, and subjected to procedures they could hardly understand. When they were finally released, both men were hysterical. They immediately reported the incident to the police. Tapes of their intimate conversations, when they believed no one was around, recorded raw terror. "I knew all along they was gonna come back for us." One STAMMERED. Calvin Parker wouldn't discuss it again for decades, traumatized by the event. He only spoke up late in life, corroborating every gruesome detail, and finally, a chilling account from Russia's frozen wasteland. In 1989, in the city of Voronezh, scores of children reported seeing a UFO touchdown at a park. Out came entities who were tall, with long arms and eyes that glowed. The children testified to a strange object, a robot-like friend, and even reported that one boy was frozen by a beam of light. Initially, it was dismissed by officials, but soon adult witnesses came forward, attesting that they had witnessed strange objects in the sky. Even Soviet media outlets hesitantly wrote the case up. To this day, the Voronezh case is one of the most disquieting mass close encounters ever. As you hear, between waking and sleep, envision what it is like to be walking home, to find light above you, to lose hours of memory without warning, to awaken in an unknown location among creatures you do not comprehend. It's the cold familiarity of these encounters that makes them stand out. Not distant lights, not voice in darkness, but touch, scoring, traumatizing, and terrorizing, with no diminishment. And yet, while skeptics protest they're nothing more than dreams, hallucinations, exaggerations, the pattern over decades, across continents, implies otherwise. Common men, with nothing to prove, sharing tales that fall into place in ghastly detail. So, rest easy now, because in our next part, the fear only grows. We'll explore encounters tied not just to individuals, but to entire military stories of UFOs disabling nuclear weapons, shadowing submarines, and leaving generals and soldiers shaken. The chilling truth may be that these encounters aren't just personal, may reach into the very heart of human power. It was March 1967 at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, under the ground, hidden in silos, were the weapons no one wanted to unleash nuclear missiles. Then, in one night, something occurred that frightened the men who manned the posts. Security patrols detected unexplained glowing things floating around the gates. The lights were silent, silky, and unlike anything they'd ever seen. Then, missile by missile, the missiles went dark. Control panels flashed red. Whole systems went down, rendering the nuclear arsenal useless. When the lights disappeared, the missiles sprang back to life as if nothing had occurred. Several officers would later testify regarding that evening. One terrifying fact bound them together. Whatever those lights were, they could shut down humanity's most lethal weapons without ever firing a shot. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. In 1980, at RAF Bentwaters in England, one of the biggest U.S. Air Force bases in Europe, there were reports of strange lights in Rendlesham Forest. Security units were sent out, and what they encountered became the most well-known UFO sighting in history. They reported a luminescent, triangular ship with odd symbols run along its side. The ship glowed as they moved closer. Instruments malfunctioned, radios were silenced. One of the officers reached out and touched the ship, afterwards remarking upon a deluge of bizarre symbols burned into his brain. Decades later, those symbols tormented him. Later researchers found that they were similar to coordinates leading to ancient and enigmatic locations on Earth. Even the deputy base commander wrote a formal report outlining the incident. But the official account, a distant lighthouse. For the men who stood in that woods, That response was a slap in the face. They know what they saw. Even the oceans aren't without hair-raising encounters. In 1970, Soviet submarines sweeping the icy seas of the Arctic reported being trailed by objects moving at impossible velocities underwater. These were not sonar pings of enemy subs. They traveled too quickly, took impossible turns, and occasionally shot off vertically into the sea overhead. The Soviets referred to them as UFOs, unidentified submerged objects. Some commanders had reported their ships trailed for days, their courses duplicated, as if being observed. One other cold fact was constant. There was no known technology capable of moving that fast, that deep, or that quietly. On the ground, in 1981, in the little Russian town of Borisogolbesk, military radar detected a huge object over a closed test area. The fighter jets were scrambled. When they reached their position, pilots reported that their controls became unresponsive. Their weapons systems malfunctioned, just as had occurred years before over Iran. But this time, a more bizarre incident happened. The pilots said, the object transformed right before their eyes, altering from a cylinder to a disc, then suddenly disappearing. After radar operators were certain that it was gone, they sat in dumbfounded silence. Their equipment had picked up an object the size of a building only to see it vanish without a trace. The most eerie tidbit in these military run-ins isn't the sightings. It's what comes after, the silence. Official records disappear. Witnesses are intimidated. And when finally documents are declassified, they are filled with blacked-out pages. But still, pieces fall through. Testimony from generals, pilots, and commanders who risked their reputations to say they witnessed something they couldn't explain. Something strong enough to shut down weapons, halt jets, and freeze even those trained never to be afraid. Imagine it, just for a moment, lying here in the dark, the very systems designed to keep us safe. The walls we believe are inviolable, brought down by lights in the sky. Engines sputter to a halt, radios grow quiet, nuclear missiles go dark like toys in a box, and all of it is done without violence, without noise, without asking permission. That's what makes these meetings so terrifying, not so much the mystery of who or what they are, but the exercise of control. Whatever or whomever they are, they don't just materialize. They seize control of the very technologies we rely on, so now you can sleep easy. Because the tale gets darker yet. In the next part, we'll step into the chilling realm of cover-ups and silenced voices. Whistleblowers who spoke too soon, researchers who vanished, and the long shadow of secrecy that stretches across every UFO encounter. In 1947, the Roswell incident ignited the dawn of contemporary UFO legend. Newspapers cried of an flying disc discovered by the Army. Later, hours, it was withdrawn. Instantly, it was merely a weather balloon. But there were witnesses. Ranchers described unexplained, metallic material. Not something they had ever handled before, so thin as to be like foil, yet indestructible. Military vehicles arrived overnight. Roads were shut down. Threats were whispered. For years, Roswell was ridiculed as fantasy. But gradually, documents came out. Military personnel on their deathbeds admitted they'd witnessed wreckage. Some even professed bodies were removed. Whether false or not, the pattern had been established. Deny, deflect, and bury the evidence. This pattern was repeated over and over. Consider Kex, Pennsylvania, 1965. A blazing object shot across the sky and crashed in the woods. Townspeople came running, telling of a bell-shaped craft, bizarre markings along its hull. Then came the military. Roads blocked, reporters rebuffed, witnesses intimidated by dark. Trucks were driving out of the woods, something bulky under tarps. When the public clamored for explanations, the government replied simply, a meteor. But the witnesses never forgot. And then, in 1980, there was the Cash Landrum incident in Texas. 2 women and a young boy, driving home late at night, encountered a massive glowing object hovering above the road. The heat was so intense it burned their skin, left blisters, and caused radiation-like sickness. Military helicopters encircled the object, as if shepherding it. But when the victims demanded answers, they were dismissed. Their bodies failed them for years. No compensation, no account, just silence, to this day. The case is among the most chilling instances of human suffering associated with an unidentified craft greeted, not by truth, but by denial. Some of the most chilling silences come from the witnesses themselves. In the 1980s, Air Force officer Richard Doty confessed to creating phony documents, serving disinformation to researchers. The purpose? Muddle, discredit, and bury the truth. Later, he admitted, with chilling candor, some of the documents were false, but some were not. And then there are the whistleblowers, who didn't survive to tell their entire tale. Scientists affiliated with defense contractors who suffered sudden and sometimes suspicious deaths. Reporters who pursued too aggressively and discovered doors slamming shut around them. Even astronauts, men who walked on the moon, suggested that they knew secrets they could not tell, speaking in enigmas of truths too deep for the public. The freezing burden of secrecy isn't what's concealed, it's how comprehensively it's enforced. Soldiers at nuclear facilities were instructed never to talk about the lights that disabled missiles. Pilots at Air Force bases, reporting encounters, saw careers destroyed, reputations torn apart. Families, in fear of ridicule, remained silent for decades. And for the ones who did speak up, too often, they were laughed at, their accounts dismissed as fantasy, hallucination, or fabrication. But behind closed doors, governments maintained records, rows of reports, thousands of cases, reports that acknowledged, in secrecy, what they denied publicly. These experiences were real, unexplained, and frequently hazardous. As you recline here tonight, sliding toward dreams, think of the terror of keeping such a secret, to have gazed upon something impossible, to have reached out and touched it, even been afflicted with eye tan. To be informed you must never tell. To possess the truth, yet see the world laugh when you attempt to tell it. To bear the weight of silence, generation upon generation. That's the true chilling power of the UFO mystery. Not just what was seen, but what was hidden. Not just the encounters themselves, but the long shadows that follow. So rest easy, dreamer. The secrets are not yours to carry tonight. They remain out there, locked away in vaults and memories. But in our third section, we'll travel deepest into the darkest shadows of all the theories of why these encounters occur, why they're concealed, and what it could mean for the future of mankind. Others insist they are travelers from other planets faring more ancient, far more wise, spanning the cosmos to observe us, to research us, to challenge our limits, maybe even to lead us. Others speak in hushed tones of travelers, not from far-off galaxies, but from time itself, returning humans from the future, mistaken for alien beings, with motives unknown. Perhaps they return not to destroy, but to warn. And then there are those who propose something sinister, that these beings are not visitors, but captives of Earth itself, shadows out of dark oceans, alternate dimensions, or secret bases under our own feet, observing us not from afar, but from beside. The frightening aspect is the not knowing. Consider Malmstrom, where missiles were disabled like toys in a box. Mercy, message, or exercise in power. Consider the abductions Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, Calvin Parker. Were these tests science, inquisitiveness, or cruelty wrapped in cold, uncaring masks? And consider the governments that hide the truth. If the accounts are lies, why conceal them? If they're fantasy, why silence witnesses with threats? The explanation might be as unseemly as the contacts themselves, that the truth is all too real, unrefutable, and too destabilizing for the world to confront. Even in the past, the heavens were full of mystery. Roman writers recorded shields of fire floating above the battlefields. In medieval Europe, monks reported glowing spheres and burning discs gliding silently through the skies. In Ireland, stories spoke of ships navigating the air. These are not old tales. They are as ancient as man himself. Only the vocabulary has altered. What if today's encounters are a part of the same tale, a trend going back centuries? Reminders that we are not alone. We have never been alone. You lay there, on the threshold of dreams, and ask yourself one last question. What do these encounters say about us? If they are guardians, then maybe we are safeguarded. If they are scientists, then maybe we are specimens. If they are explorers, then it is possible we are neighbors. But if they are not any of these, if their goals are something we cannot begin to understand, then perhaps the most terrifying fear is not what they are, but what they desire. Yet the night is not just for fear, it is for wonder. Because for all the spine-tingling tales, there is awe. For all the secrets, there is a glimmer of curiosity. Mankind has never stopped gazing upwards, never ceased to wonder what comes next. And maybe these meetings are not warnings, but invitations. Invitations to continue asking, to continue seeking, to continue dreaming of stars not far away, but near. So rest easy, dreamer. You've traveled with us through the most chilling encounters ever recorded. Through shadows and whispers, through fear and silence, the mysteries remain, but they are not yours to carry tonight. Let them drift away. Like lights fading into the horizon, the stars are still above you, quiet and eternal. The night is still alive with secrets, waiting for tomorrow. And you, dreamer, are safe. This is Midnight Disclosure. Farewell for now. May your slumber be peaceful, and the darkness lead you gently into rest. Sleep well, dream deep, and never lose your way.